My topic for this talk is the healing encounter. The healing encounter is something I'm very much interested in. Encounters, generally, what it means to connect with one another, and what it means to heal. And what the relationship of being healed and being cured or not cured might be. From the perspective of my tradition, we're all healed. We start out healed. We're fundamentally healed, and we've never been unhealed, which is our fundamental nature. And it's interesting that the word heal is not connected with getting over a disease. It's connected with the word whole, wholeness, that we are whole and complete, no matter what our condition of so-called regular health and illness might be. It's also connected with the word for holy, holy, the sense of sacredness of this precious life, the sacredness of our bodies, our mind, our emotions, no matter what their condition of chaos or pleasure or pain may be. So I'd like to raise at least a question to consider over the course of the weekend. What does it really mean to be healed? And what keeps us from being healed? I know people who were not cured of illness who are very much healed, and I know people who seem to, quote, recover, who are very much not healed. So it would be interesting to explore what that's about. What does it take to feel whole? Someone had mentioned earlier a sense of oddity that in the West there could be considered to be self-hate or self-loathing. What would it mean to be at ease? That's another thing with disease, is being out of balance, out of ease. What would it mean to be fully at ease in your own skin, in your own state of mind, however it is, and your own state of health, no matter what it is? What does it mean to be at ease with what is actually happening? To be fully with what is actually happening? To be healed, to be whole, and to be at ease. These are questions that I raise myself. There's been a discussion up to this point, a little bit of discussion of roles of caregivers or healers or clinicians or doctors, nurses, whatever you want to call it, and talking about being in relationship with patients or but there really are no doctors, there are no patients. They really aren't. They're just humans who have certain roles to play. But I think sometimes the roles become the reality and the humans become the less reality. So how can we connect? How can we encounter from those positions, from the conventional notions of what it is to be a teacher or a minister or a rabbi or a patient? We have ideas of what it's supposed to be like, what it's supposed to be like, what we're supposed to be. And the way we talk about these things in our culture really much affects what the experience is. We talk about success and failure. We talk about winning and losing, winning the battle, losing the battle, a courageous battle with cancer. We don't have courageous battles with heart disease, but somehow we have courageous battles with cancer. We have embarrassment, and we have fear. Interesting, the notion of encounter in itself is, just as a word, is interesting, because it's related to contra, like in contrary. So in contrast, two sides being connected from different perspectives, like a crash, kind of like that. But actually, perhaps this better term, instead of taking healing encounter, is a kind of healing space, or healing interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh uses the term, interbeing, being together. So if you have two people, one of them being treated, one of them being the healer, so to speak, bringing in their whole enchilada, each of them, their whole history, their whole religious tradition, their whole background, their emotional bundle, coming into proximity, how does it change from just being in proximity to being a true encounter? And why bother? What's the point of an encounter? Encounter is where the healing takes place. In my tradition, we talk a lot about in-between. In-between you and I is where healing takes place. In between past and future is where healing takes place. In that raw space, when you step into slightly raw, uncomfortable space together, that's where healing takes place. In between, the space in between. True healing and truly being with another person is kind of scary and vulnerable. Scary and vulnerable. And so most of us, at least me, don't want to go there that often. Yet we expect the other person to. We expect the other person to grow through the experience. And we want to watch and enjoy it from a slight distance. And you say, well, how can you ask someone to go into a space that you aren't willing to go into yourself? And the basic space, the basic state we all share is that none of us are here very long. And the world's gone on for a long time without us, and it'll be totally fine once we leave. And we don't have much time. And we may feel blessed in many ways of health and vigor, but this life is unpredictable. This life is totally unpredictable. So how can we help ourselves be able to connect at a level that is even, on a level that is not higher and lower based, powerful and unpowerful based connection? People have talked, Sagan and other people talked about kind of same boat or level playing field, that kind of thing, which is not easy because just on a practical, physical level, you have a vertical person and a horizontal person. That's not a normal way of communicating. That's not literally on a level playing field. Literally, one is higher looking down at someone who is prone, usually. Sick people often are lying down. Yeah. So right away there's a kind of a physical challenge to enter this same boat or to be this level playing field. So I'd say in talking about entering together into a space that could be healing, we have three areas that we can work with. One is the physical. You know, a lot of times we're trying to solve problems. We're trying to do the right thing, say the right thing, think the right thing, whatever, and it's all going on up here. And we think that the answers, where we're going to be helpful, is by having some kind of answer or some kind of pointer or something to say or something. And we often forget just the simple physical, the power of communication of physicality. Physicality, our bodies. Our bodies. In my observation, just simply the physical entry into a room, if you're visiting someone, communicates a tremendous amount. In a first instant, the person enters the room and approaches you, something is communicated. We don't often realize how much we're communicating that we're not intending to communicate. So how to be intentional communicating by being embodied, aware of the physical presence. And this physical connectedness has to do with your own being kind of sophisticated about how you hold your own body, how you handle your world, the objects within it, with awareness and tenderness, but also being tuned in a bit more, which I think is another weakness sometimes, as to the effect of the form, the environment, physical environment on healing. And you think of where many people are in their last days of their life, in hospital rooms, which are, was once described to me from my teacher's view of it, was a place of broken glass and sharp edges, as a metaphor for the hospital. Loud, impersonal, unpleasant, bright, brilliant lights on. It is not an environment that in itself is already setting up an obstacle. So how to be in your body? Are you breathing? Are you breathing now? Are you restless? Are you kind of edgy? Is there a dullness? Or are you just out of it and sort of crashing around? Where are you in your body? And what would be your sense of empathy with the body that you are encountering, just as a form, just as a person with various physical sensations happening? The second level of that's very important to be aware of is obviously the emotional realm. We're in a sea of emotions all the time. Sometimes they're very obvious and flashy, and many times they're kind of an undercurrent, the kind of gurgling beneath the situation that colors everything before we even know it. There's a sense of when you enter the room, when you're making an encounter, what kind of, how receptive are you to what is the emotional flavor of that moment in that room? And what is your awareness of the emotional texture within your own state of being? And what colors are mixing in that space of connectedness? What colors of emotions? What energies? And this is very much connected with what is said to be underpinning of emotional life to a large degree, is what is swirling around in terms of what your hopes are and what your fears are. The hopes and fears that kind of feed emotional upheavals. We've talked about a lot of different emotions, from the good, the bad, and the ugly, but so far the words haven't come up: love, friendliness, kindness. Those are all emotions that very much matter. And they're don't have to be so highfalutin, so to speak, as compassion. They can be very simple. Simple friendliness, simple kindness goes a long way. Kindness and simplicity. Simplicity. And the willingness not only just to recognize what's emotionally happening, but just to be with it. Emotions are not necessarily a problem. And death doesn't necessarily have to be tidy. It's not like we're being good housekeepers and we make everybody be comfortable. Attachment to comfort is something to be very much aware of. And when you're dealing with what to do in a situation, it's very important to think, whose discomfort are we talking about? It's my discomfort that I want to get rid of by taking care of your so-called problem? I don't know. And this leads to the mental quality of your state of mind, that, a lot of times it seems we have our state of mind, it's inside us, so nobody can see, thank heavens. They don't really know what's going on. at the same time, what's going on actually does affect what you do and what happens to those that you're caring for. We've talked, many people have mentioned just the notion of distractedness, being able to kind of steady your mind, being able to ground your mind a little bit and hold your mind. And there's also been a little bit of discussion of how to relax your mind, how to relax your mind. The phrase I like about dealing with your mind, particularly in situations that are painful, situations where we're witnessing or bearing witness to suffering, our own and others, is that said when the situation goes up, don't let your mind go up. And when the situation goes down, don't let your mind go down. A sense of the steadiness of mind. The other thing that's interesting about developing mindfulness is not just like being calm and collected all the time. I think that's sometimes overwrought description of Buddhists. They're supposed to be kind of smiley and nice all the time. But there is a kind of an insight quality of working with mindfulness practice as well. And the way I like to look at that is not believing everything you think. Not believing everything you think. And we tend, sadly, to say that we actually do believe what we think. We actually think that what we are perceiving is what's going on most of the time. And we're not as cynical as we should be about our tendency to define things. We don't like things undefined. We try to define things and we try to direct things. And it's my experience that you can't force situations. You can't force realization. You can't force someone to do things the way you want them. You can't force healing. You can't force connectedness. You can't force health. And we like to fix things. We like to make things happen. We want to figure out what to do. And the thing to do is not to do anything. From not doing anything, we can do lots. But first, we have to not do anything. First, we have to be receptive. First, you have to have antennae that are tuned in. You have to tune in. It's like, I think of those when I was in school, they were always telling us how to cross the street. Say, stop, look, listen. So we don't get run over. They say, stop, look, listen, so we don't run over by a distracted mind, emotional upheavals, and just general panic, right? So if no other practice that you apply as you go about daily life, if you just do the practice of stopping momentarily, just stop. It's amazing what happens. You just stop. Because as we're challenged, I think we tend to get speedier. We try to more and more desperate to figure out, well, do we feel the responsibility, having to take care of a situation and having to be good at it, fear of failure, fear of mistakes, all sorts of things go, like that. And we kind of stop. You can stop. You can cut it. You can cut at any moment. Cut and start fresh. And the other kind of aspect of healing and healing encounter that is so interesting to me, and I think we work with all the time, is, I guess you call it unifying our world. Unifying our world. What happens is that swirling around as we're trying to be in a situation, in our mind is what used to be. There's a lot of what used to be. We're sick, there's a lot of dwelling on what used to be. And the notion we can get back to, quotes, normal. There is no normal to go back to, and you can't go back to anything. You can only go forward. That's life. You can't go backwards. And there's no normal. It's not unnormal to be sick. It's not normal to be healthy. It's normal to be whatever is happening. And when we're not swirling around with that, we're dwelling in what should be. How many times do you think, this shouldn't be happening? This is not right. This shouldn't be happening. And then we have ideas what should be happening, according to the world, according to me. It's what should be happening. But it's not. But we get caught in the kind of the pain of what's happening versus what we want to be happening. Not only what we want, but really justice demands should be happening, but it's not. So where does that leave us? Nowhere. What really is the connecting point is saying, who cares what used to happen? Who cares what might be happening instead? None of that is happening. What matters is what is. What is. Whether you like it or not, it's kind of beside the point. Starting with this is what is, now what are we going to do? Where can we connect as is? As is. And how can you actually accept another person as they are in a situation as it is without just trying to immediately fix it? So this may sound, like a defeatist. You say, okay, everything's happening, what is, nothing's going to change. But the odd thing is that reaching, it's sort of like bottoming out if you're an addict. You reach the point where things are just the way they are, and you actually acknowledge that. Then there's a chance for the direction to arise from the connection with you and other, rather than from some preconceived notion or some just desire to get out of an uncomfortable situation and change it one way or another and then leave. And then hope you don't have to see them again for a while and come back, right? Not that anyone would have thoughts like that. But I guess what I've noticed is that if there's a certain simplicity and you have a freshness in entering each encounter, you take an interest in the other person, and you pay attention to the small gestures of how you speak, how you are in your body, how you can infuse kindness and acceptance into the space between you and other, that the energy shifts. So we have much more power than we think in shifting the energy through our presence, through our interest, and through a certain lightness of being. I think that's another thing it's easy to lose track of because it's very heavy, the amount of suffering people have at every level and in so many ways. And sometimes I think we feel we kind of add to the heaviness. We should be heavy, and along with everyone heavy, that shows how empathic we are because we feel so crappy, just like you. I feel really bad. And I think that's a misunderstanding of what it is to be kind, healing, and compassionate. There's kind of a lightness of going through life, a lightness of realizing, in a big view, the endless turning of happiness and sadness, of suffering and pleasure, pain and pleasure, and feeling lost and feeling found. So I guess I'd like to have room for dialogue and stories and discussion, but I think my final point is that healing is a verb, health is not a noun. We're never totally healthy, never totally sick. It's a totally endless cycle. And what we're doing in encountering people is never the same from one instant to the next. There's a dynamic happening, and it's a mistake to freeze it at any one point, to freeze it and define it and to limit it. So to place our interaction humbly within the great space of human experience and the fact of all of our challenges, and being vulnerable together. Open our heart, be willing to be wrong, be willing to be unknowing, be willing to make mistakes. It's all worth it. It's all worth it for each one moment of connection. Because in that connecting point, magic happens, healing happens, people transform. And we are transformed. It's like the stories of the gardening. The garden grows the gardener. The patient grows the caregiver. And that's the way it works, even though we might think otherwise. That's the way it works. So that's all I had to say.